an ideal life partner.
She was attractive and smart and vivacious. At times, she almost seemed too perfect.
At the end of the visit, and 18 days after meeting this person for the first time, we got married.
2 marriages that become entangled in a deadly web of deception and violence.
My blood froze. It was this crazy, crazy world that I'd entered into just got a whole lot crazier.
I don't know a good way to describe their marriage other than it's just strange.
And come to one shocking end.
He said there was a shooting in the house. Someone tried to kill Mommy.
I just looked at them and I said, "Is my son here?" And they go, "Yes." And I'm like, "Is he dead?"
Love may be blind and marriage bliss, but divorce is murder. (1987). John Pittman, a high-flying medical student in Chicago, catches the eye of Tracey Richter, a bright and beautiful radiographer.
She was attractive and smart and vivacious, and she had an ability to read people that I hadn't really ever encountered before. She also sort of had a way of knowing what you were, wanted to hear or were very interested in. And, at times she almost seemed too perfect.
And she always got good grades in school. And at that time, because her SAT test, she got one of the highest scores, I'm pretty sure, in the whole United States.
She has a 145, 150 IQ, which is very, very high IQ, very bright, very perceptive.
In 1989, the happy newlyweds move west to the mountain city of Denver, Colorado, where John throws himself into a demanding medical career.
I was in a high-powered, high-energy, high-demand residency, 120-hour work week. The residency went very well. Things were very promising.
When he meets Tracey's family, the Richters, they give John a warm Midwestern welcome.
Very down-to-earth, but I like that. So we all got along just great.
We treated him like a son, no different than if he was our son. And up to that point, I mean, he was okay. And my point is, I'm not married to him. You don't all like the same people.
But after 2 years, the honeymoon is over. Tracey's career falters, and she becomes unsettled and restless.
She would get a job, then all of a sudden, I'd get some sort of story, and then she'd be doing a different job, and then there'd be a different job.
She's just as unhappy staying at home.
As she didn't really have a job. She was just around the house, and not much was getting done. She also claimed we were both big animal lovers, or so she claimed she was, and I am a big animal lover. So we started acquiring pets, and which is great. But I found myself being the one taking care of them.
Psychotherapist Stacy Kaiser and forensic psychologist Brian Russell see signs of trouble emerging.
I think intellectually you can understand, I'm married to a man who works a lot of hours because he's building a career and a life for us. And I think emotionally you can still feel neglected. I see this happen with women all the time. Just because I understand that you need to work doesn't mean that I don't want your love and adoration.
If one person feels smart and intelligent and capable, and yet it's the other person who seems to be the one who's busy, the one who has the life outside the home, the one who's making the money, getting all the recognition and prestige, you can have a resentment born of that.
John's parents never really warmed to his young wife, and their opinion of her is about to plummet.
There was a major credit card fraud incident, and that was the first real sign of things to come. My parents had 2 high limit credit cards that someone got their hands on.
After thousands of dollars are spent on household items, John's parents investigate the trail of fraud. Their investigation leads to a very surprising source, Tracey.
When you take the credit card, how it was used, where it was used, who the list of suspects were, which was a very short list, it really started to look like it was her. She was adamant in her denials. I mean adamant. She basically said there is in no way was she involved with this in any way, shape, or form, and anyone who would accuse her of such, was out to get her.
No charges are filed, and the couple try to put it behind them. But the atmosphere within the family remains chilly, made worse, according to Anna, by the birth of their son.
I was out there when Bert was born, and I think the 6 weeks that I was out there, if you would put all the days together that John was home, maybe it would come out to a week. But even when he was home, he was always very distant, very much to himself. It was difficult for John to show affection, and he didn't seem to have attachments.
Whoever's at fault, the couple's arguments become longer, crueler, and more frequent.
She became difficult in a hurry. She had an explosive temper, which I had never seen before. There became a cycle where no matter what happened, all of a sudden it was my fault, and I was responsible. And you certainly shoulder your share of the blame, and maybe a little bit extra, and that's fine. But I began to really notice that she never really took responsibility for anything. It looked like she just was looking for something to complain about on a daily basis, and to create a picture of enemies, surrounding her, including me, and certainly my family. She would go to work somewhere, and then there would be some horrible incident. I remember she said that some boss's son sexually harassed her and, was accusing her of all sorts of things. So there would always be some sort of blow-up, some big incident.
As the tension escalates, Tracey's temper takes a dramatic and violent turn.
It was, again, something really minor. I think my shoes were out of place or something really tiny. And she just absolutely exploded. And it was not like anything I'd ever seen. It was almost like an animal. And she turned to me and said, you're never going to leave this house alive. She comes out of the bedroom waving a gun. And I knew we had a gun, but I didn't know that's what she was getting. But once I saw it, I basically dove out the door as soon as I saw that. I heard the gun go off. And she appeared at the front door and was super apologetic, and I'm so sorry, and all of a sudden that entire mood and rage was gone, just gone.
John calls the police, but Tracey insists she had no intention of shooting him.
As Tracey was charming, very passive, and very apologetic, she then explained to me that it was a suicide attempt, that she wanted to kill herself. Which, she shot in the air, and I didn't see what happened. I did not see her physically shoot the gun. It was possible.
She was distraught. She brought the gun down, didn't realize it was loaded, and it went off. I find the claims that John would say she tried to harm him funny, because at the time, never once did he ever accuse her of trying to harm him. Never once.
Stacy Kaiser and Dr. Brian Russell see a marriage in serious trouble.
The discharge of the gun maybe was accidental at that point, but the propensity for her to create a risk for violence, at the very least, should have been a giant red flag waving all over the place in front of him.
They aren't really talking about their problems. They're just busy living their lives. And I think it really made her escalate to a point of almost going crazy.
After the gun incident, Tracey is charged with discharging a weapon. She's forced to undergo 6 months of psychological counseling. But the couple is determined to repair the damage. John gets a job back in Chicago, and they begin preparations for the move.
We sold our house, and all of our pets were supposed to be sent to Chicago. But she called me up one day in this panic and said, oh my gosh, something terrible has happened, they're gone. She made this big story and very emotional and very convincing that, she had taken them to a company that said they'd ship them, but it turns out it was some front for some lab somewhere and they're gone now, which I thought was bizarre. At that point, I realized something is completely wrong, that there is something wrong here.
Convinced Tracey is lying, John seeks the advice of a private investigator.
I started telling him about the pets, and he keyed in on that immediately and said, there's a problem. And then he started asking me questions, one after the other. And I was like, yeah. He says, is this true? And I was like, yeah. Is this happening? Yeah. And he just sort of went down. It was like he had a checklist. He said, the person that can just throw away that many, animals that you're killing yourself taking care of, tells you something.
As the interview continues, John remembers another suspicious incident.
She had asked me multiple times to increase my life insurance, and I was like, well, why? I'm just a resident. I mean, it's not like, we have big assets to protect or something like that. But she really was persistent, really constantly badgered me about that, and I didn't do it.
John's fears proved to be justified.
He concluded the interview and he said, yeah, you definitely need, you need to hire somebody because your life's in danger.
John Pittman and Tracey Richter had so much potential. But the rosy glow of newlywed love has dimmed, leaving violence, fear, and paranoia. By 1992, John has hired an investigator to unravel what he believes is a plot against his life.
What the investigator explained to me was that, number one, what she's going to try to do is get you alone, where she knows you're alone and you're in private. And that's when it's going to happen, because she's not going to kill you. She's going to have someone else do it.
I think that John did the right thing by hiring a private investigator. That said, if you reach a point in a relationship where you think you need to hire an investigator, then I think you have to really look at whether or not you should be in that relationship.
As John and Tracey prepare to move back east to Chicago, the investigator continues his surveillance.
She called me and said, hey, let's meet at our apartment, and then we'll go get some dinner. I said, okay, and as soon as I got off the phone, Glenn, the investigator, called, and he said, something's going on. And I said, well, why do you say that? And he said, did she just call you? Because you could see her on the cell phone. He said, what did she say? And I explained, and he said, well, you got a real problem. And I said, why is that? He said, well, your apartment is due east, and she is headed straight west as fast as she can go. And he said, whatever you do not go to your apartment, and you need to go to a public place right now. Sure enough, she called a few minutes later and said, oh, I'm at the apartment. Where are you? She wasn't at the apartment at all. She was up in the mountains at that point.
John never discovers whether there really was a hitman lying in wait. But his fears are heightened when the investigator reports that Tracey is associating with some very shady characters.
He said they're living under assumed names. He said the vehicles they drove were registered to other people. She spent 7 different nights with 4 different males, something like that. So this obviously wasn't an affair. There was something else going on here completely. These are people you don't want to be fooling around with. So with that, I, was very thankful that I had gotten out of there alive. I didn't need any more convincing at that point. That was pretty obvious to me that she really had a problem.
4 years into their marriage, in fear for his life, John moves out of the family home, leaving his wife and 2-year-old son. Initially, Tracey refuses to accept that the marriage is over.
She kept calling me, wanting to reconcile and all this, and I just didn't want anything to do with it. I just didn't even want to think about it at that point.
But 4 years later, with the divorce finalized, Tracey does move on in a dramatic way. By 1996, she is swept up in a whirlwind internet romance with Australian entrepreneur Michael Roberts.
Wasn't particularly interested at the beginning, but there was a little bit of backwards and forwards, mainly with email. I mean, she was beautiful, she was articulate, she was very engaging, socially talented, and everybody loved her. So it, signed me up. I was hooked.
Tracey agrees to fly to Australia and meet Michael in person. Tracey's mother, Anna, is alarmed at the prospect.
You're going to a different country, you don't know this person. Are you sure this is what you want to do? But she wanted to go out there. He talked her into coming out there. And Michael can be very persuasive.
Tracey came to Australia, and well, I proposed. And at the end of the visit, and 18 days after meeting this person, for the first time, we got married.
Just a few months later, Michael moves to Chicago. He quickly discovers that his new bride has plenty of baggage from her previous marriage. Tracey rages against her ex, John Pittman, who is fighting to get custody of their young son.
Tracey asserted that he was a narcissist, that he was cared only about money, about himself, about power and prestige.
In the years following the separation, John and Tracey's custody battle has become increasingly hostile.
So next thing I know, I'm suddenly being accused of everything under the sun, of being this terrible husband and, you know, have multiple affairs and all these things that she looked like she had done.
She was just having a lot of problems even afterwards with visitation with him. And like he would take him and wouldn't bring him back when he was supposed to, and at one time he abducted him. And so there was a lot of hard feelings, and I think that was what really put the wedge between them.
Our son started showing up, and he's only 3 years old at the time, with very strange marks on him, on his face, on his body, that, you know, kids fall and they get bruised, and, you know, that stuff happens. But these look strange to me. And I started asking him about it, and at first he really wouldn't say much about it, but then he started telling me that his mother had hit him, which was a real shocker to me. That was a shocker. I did not see her ever being violent towards her child, and I didn't expect that.
Tracey makes a startling accusation that throws the custody proceedings into chaos.
We walk into court, filing a motion, you know, all these things, and they turn around, their attorney says, well, we have physical evidence that he's been sexually molested and that his father is the responsible party. And I was in shock. I was stunned. All of a sudden, flyers started appearing on all the cars around the hospital, naming me as a child molester. And they were all putting on the windows of the cars in the parking lot right across from my apartment.
John denies everything and fights Tracey's accusations tooth and nail. But Michael believes her and stands loyally by her side.
I adopted the battle as my own. My time, my money, my resources, my emotions. I put a big hedge around the family to protect them from this monster, Dr. Pittman.
The custody battle is not Tracey's only disturbing legal dispute. She tells Michael she's also suing her dentist, a Dr. Laspiza, for an incident during which she says she was drugged and sexually assaulted.
She said she woke up and to find her dress around her waist, and that he was fondling her breasts and masturbating, and that she had red high-heel shoes that were far too small for her feet, on her feet. And that was the story. And I'm like, oh man, what do I do with this? Give me my normal life back. But of course, she's my wife and somebody's raped her. So I was, you know, the fangs came out again, and I had a new battle to fight.
Even though she's suing for damages, Tracey has not gone to the police. And bizarrely, she's waited several months before telling Michael about the incident.
I felt pretty dishonored to be left in the dark by that. It's like, if somebody sexually assaults you and it's not your fault, why wouldn't you tell me?
Tracey's supposedly a victim over and over and over and over again. It seems like every man who comes into Tracey's life has abused her, or abused her children, or abused both, mistreated her in some way. Okay, this is either the most unlucky human being in the history of the world in front of me right now, or this is a liar in front of me right now.
You're stressed out and I don't feel...
Just like his predecessor, Michael is shocked by Tracey's hair-trigger temper.
When Tracey wanted to go out for hamburgers for dinner for the 4th time in a row, I said, can we have something healthy? And she took that as a personal affront. She just turned into a monster. She literally turned in front of 2 lanes of traffic on our side and then 4 lanes of traffic on the other side, wheels spinning, to go somewhere else. And from that point on, I was hypervigilant.
And Michael isn't exempt from Tracey's colorful perception of reality. She complains that he's both neglectful and overly controlling.
He was very possessive. When she would come over, because she'd say, oh, he's playing video games downstairs and he's been down there for 3 hours. So she says, I got lonely, so I came over. She would be in the house 5 minutes and he'd be calling, when are you coming home? When are you coming home? Wherever she was, she couldn't go anywhere.
My relationship with Tracey was acrimonious. It was dysfunctional. It was debilitating. I was always looking for something that would change Tracey or change me, because of course I blamed myself for a lot as well. I didn't understand why, but it was all my fault. And the Richter family now make that very clear that it's all my fault now too, so.
Tracey has people who adamantly defend her. And not only does she paint herself to be the victim, but she creates elaborate stories about how other people have hurt her, and she's just been this sweet, innocent person in the mix.
The trust in this relationship is rapidly fading, especially when Michael suspects infidelity.
One thing that she claimed before we even met the first time was that she was a model for Black Velvet whiskey, and that she would do these modeling gigs and it was always in a short black velvet dress, but never brought a paycheck for it, and sometimes would come home sooner than the trip to wherever she was going would have taken and have showers when she comes home.
Suspecting affairs, Michael tries to fix the problem by arranging for couples counseling.
But I thought all the fault was mine, because Tracey and her parents would tell me that was the case. She would accuse me with counselors of certain things, and I would admit them just to show, just because if I didn't, of course, that's denial. And I just wanted to try and break through. It was a very, very strange time.
If this marriage is to survive, he and Tracey need a fresh start. In 1998, the couple decides to leave Chicago and start again in a small Iowa town called Early.
It was pretty much, or throw a dart at a map. That's how we came to be in Early, Iowa, unfortunately, for the people of Early, Iowa.
By the year 2000, they have 2 children together, giving Tracey's son a new brother and sister. Michael's business is flourishing, and the family seems content.
The move from Chicago to Early was a breath of fresh air for me. There was just so many stresses in my life, and it was away from what I thought to be unhealthy influences.
But his optimism quickly fades. The family is about to be caught up in an inexplicable tragedy.
He said there was a shooting in the house. Someone tried to kill Mommy.
Tracey Richter and Michael Roberts are proving to be popular in small-town Iowa. Neighbors are unaware of their checkered history. Tracey's ongoing custody battles with her first husband, John, the sexual assault claim against a dentist, and her alleged affairs in Chicago. Mona Wehde, a local real estate agent, has no idea that her life will be tragically transformed by her new neighbors.
They seemed very, very friendly. You know, they were just, very pleasant people, outgoing, kind, considerate. You know, they just seemed like really nice people when they moved to the community.
The couple's lavish spending makes a considerable impression.
It was just kind of like one thing after another. They were always fixing up their big Victorian house, and then they got a camper, and then they kind of remodeled their camper, and then they got a brand new camper and kind of showed it off and bragged about it. And pretty soon they got an acreage where they had their Arabian horses, put up their little white picket fence, and they were just always spending money.
Mona takes a job working for Michael's internet business. The marital tension is impossible to ignore.
They would always, be talking about the other. Michael would say, I love Tracey, but, and then Tracey would be in a conversation with me and she'd say, well, I really love Michael, but, and I'm going, okay.
Ever the Good Samaritan, Michael offers to help Mona's troubled and unemployed teenage son, Dustin.
Michael told me, well, how about if I just kind of take Dustin under my wing and, we can invite him to do some stuff with us. And I'm like, great, wonderful. I mean, that would really be nice. They just kind of went out and rode around and talked a little bit.
It's not long before Mona sees the full extent of their increasingly dysfunctional relationship. One day, Tracey discovers that a bad business deal has cost them thousands of dollars.
And Tracey comes storming in the back door. She was just stomping and rampaging and cursing and yelling at Michael. And Michael looked at me and he says, I'm gonna have to excuse you. I'm gonna ask you to go home now. And I said, no problem, not my business. So I just got up and gathered my things and I left. Well, the next day, Michael had called and told me that he had spent the night in jail. And I'm like, what?
She started literally kicking her boots through both the drywall on both sides. It would come right through. And she was doing this right over a 220-volt heater. So I put my arms around her to pull her back because I actually thought she was going to electrocute herself. I didn't throw her to the floor. I didn't drop her to the floor. I actually laid her down. And then I stepped back because she was hurting me.
An hour later, local police receive a call from Tracey and Michael's home.
And then red and blue lights outside. And that was it. Police officers, guns drawn. I came to the front door. I said, what's up, guys? I said, put the child down, put the child down. I was taken away.
Very much like what happened with John, where there was this explosion of anger. She starts going crazy. She's kicking the wall. She seems to be seeing red. He's having a hard time getting her to focus. This is definitely a pattern.
Meanwhile, Tracey's ex-husband, John Pittman, is pressing his case for custody of their son.
She hadn't behaved well as a co-parent at that point, and she was going to have problems in the Illinois court. That was number one. She had made a second abuse allegation that had failed, and obviously things were falling apart at home with her and Michael because they'd gotten into a fight, and he ended up in jail.
Custody disputes, allegations of abuse, and a sexual assault case should provide enough drama for any married couple. But what happens next turns this drama into a tragedy.
I was supposed to contact Tracey about some work that she had for Dustin. She goes, oh, we've just got a whole bunch of copies for him to make. She said, just send him down in the next day or two. And I'm like, okay.
Later that day, Mona receives a horrifying telephone call.
My nephew called me on my cell phone and he had told me something really bad had happened at my friend's house down the street. And the house is all taped off and, there was a fatality, but he goes, I don't know who. And I just personally thought Michael had shot Tracey or Tracey had shot Michael. And my husband goes, I think Dustin's car is at the Roberts. I'm just like, I want to see my son. I want to see my son. And they're like, you can't. You need to go home.
Tracey's mother, Anna, hears the news from her 11-year-old grandson.
At first he was calm and he goes, Grandma? And I said, yeah. He said there was a shooting in the house. Someone tried to kill Mommy.
2 men had broken in, tried to strangle Tracey. She'd managed to get a gun and kill one, and the other got away.
December 2001. The Roberts family home in Early, Iowa is a scene of turmoil and tragedy. According to Tracey, who was at home with the kids, 2 men entered the house and attacked her violently. Tracey shoots one of them dead, and the other escapes. The dead man turns out to be a familiar face at the Roberts home, Dustin Wehde.
I just looked at them and I said, "Is my son here?" And they go, "Yes." And I'm like, "Is he dead?" And they go, "Yes." It was just like, you got to be kidding me.
My blood froze. It was this crazy world that I'd entered into just got a whole lot crazier.
Family and investigators try to piece together this horrific chain of events.
She heard someone coming downstairs, and she thought it was Michael coming home early.
Saw 2 men coming up the stairs, didn't recognize them.
She says, "I just turned with the baby, and I start running towards the bedroom."
Ran to the boys' room, handed my daughter to one of the boys, was pulled back by a ponytail, closed the door while being pulled back, was strangled, fell unconscious.
Tracey says the attackers tried to strangle her with pantyhose.
From what I understand, when Tracey woke up, she pushed herself back, and they hit the wall, and she got away.
She got up, ran to the room, got underneath the bed, was able to get a gun out.
And then she just laid there between the bed and the wall and just started firing in the direction. And then she heard running down the stairs.
When the police arrive, they find Mona's son, Dustin, dead in a pool of blood. The second intruder, whose identity is unknown, has apparently escaped. In the days following, Mona Wehde tries to understand this devastating tragedy.
None of it made sense. And then as the police are starting to ask us questions, I would ask questions. Well, was the house broke into? No. I'm like, my son parked right in front of their house under their security light. Did he have any weapons? No. Did he have a mask? No. Did he have gloves on? No. And there was no forceful entry. But he went there to rob him. I'm like, that don't make any sense.
It also doesn't make much sense to the police.
The story seemed bizarre. There didn't really seem to be a motive for the 2 men to be in the house. They decided to maybe go in the house and steal some guns or steal some jewelry or maybe even attack Tracey sexually. But the problem is every kind of corner that they turned led to a dead end. Dustin didn't have any friends. Dustin didn't really want anything from the Roberts other than to be their friends.
Tracey's not short on enemies. Could one of them have hired or persuaded Dustin to invade the Roberts family home? Everyone's got a theory. Michael's first thought is that the dentist, Dr. Laspiza, who allegedly drugged and sexually assaulted his wife, is involved.
3 days before, we were in Chicago. We were ready to go to trial with this guy, a jury trial with this guy, for the alleged rape. I said, you have to look for an Illinois number plate. It's got to be. I just knew it was Laspiza.
Anna suspects Michael. She feels he reacted strangely on the day of the shooting.
He was so cold. I mean, the look on his face, his eyes, it was scary almost to the point. And he didn't really ask any question.
Tracey points to the acrimonious custody dispute with her ex-husband, John.
And every time I would demonstrate how Dr. Laspiza was the obvious suspect in this, she would shoot it down and would bring it back to Dr. Pittman.
According to Anna, Tracey is desperate to find out the motives behind the attack.
She just couldn't figure out why, and all she kept asking was why. She said, all I want to do is find out why.
Mona does not believe for a minute that her son Dustin was killed in self-defense.
We didn't know what happened or why or how. We really thought that, you know, Dustin walked in on something, seen or learned something he wasn't supposed to, and they had to kill him. And then we were saying they, meaning Michael and Tracey. The thought did come up, you know, was Tracey trying to seduce my son, and Michael came home and caught it and shot him and killed him. But, you know, I seriously, in the beginning, thought Michael was using Tracey and making her come up with this story, and, you know, she's this heroic mother that's saving her children. Tracey would always talk about how infatuated Michael is with guns, and they had a lot of guns, 60, I don't know, a lot of guns. And I'd see them laying around periodically, and they were big guns. They weren't just little guns. They were all kinds of shapes and sizes, and I was kind of like, those are scary. You know, and that was another reason why, you know, you kind of thought Michael did it.
Privately, Michael also has grave doubts about Tracey's account of the killing.
It was a mess. There was blood, brain matter, bone everywhere. And it just stunk. The first thing I did was looked at the floor, and there was 3 bullet holes in a very tight group that I think any marksman would be proud of.
He finds it hard to believe that pantyhose were conveniently available to be used as a murder weapon.
The weapon was found on the banister, which was her pantyhose, which wasn't where pantyhose were left. She had those little dryer bags for her lingerie, and I prohibited anything to be dried on that banister. Lots of very strange details that didn't fit in a practical way.
But in public, Michael backs Tracey up 100%.
I was her champion and defender after that. When people would question motives, question evidence and so forth, I would always be able to present it in a way that puts her in the most favorable light.
And Michael was bragging about it afterwards. Oh, don't mess with the mother and her kids, you know, and that. And he was going around, you know, patting her on the back and telling her what a great person she was and how she saved her children.
Amidst the fear and suspicion, the residents of Early, Iowa are unaware that police have stumbled on a crucial piece of evidence, a notebook.
The notebook was the centerpiece of the case, the notebook that was found in Dustin Wehde's car.
Filled with Dustin's sloppy handwriting, the notebook backs up Tracey's theory that her ex-husband is involved, and the police believe the notebook is genuine. Dustin writes that he was hired as a hitman by a mysterious fellow named JP, Dr. John Pittman. It reads, JP wants me to get or force his ex, TR, to kill her son Bert and then commit suicide. And if that plan fails, plan B is to make it appear as though TR had committed the murder of her son and then committed suicide. It is damning evidence. Tracey's first husband becomes the primary suspect. But meanwhile, a deadly plot is taking shape that will put her second husband in grave danger.
I took her back 3 times, and then in March she tried to kill me.
Dustin Wehde has been shot dead by Tracey Richter in an apparent act of self-defense. Dustin's handwritten notebook suggests that Tracey's first husband, Dr. John Pittman, is involved. But lead investigator Trent Villada has some doubts.
I still have yet to find anyone to believe that a nationally recognized plastic surgeon would have decided to hire Dustin Wehde as an assassin for Tracey. That it doesn't make any sense. It doesn't make any sense that they would know Dustin. It doesn't make any sense that if they wanted Tracey to die, that they would ask Dustin to do it.
I remember hearing something from someone that I was being implicated in, and I thought, well, you know, how ridiculous is that? But, you know, what else is new?
Dustin's mother, Mona Wehde, refuses to believe he wrote the journal of his own free will.
They asked me if my son journaled, and I'm like, no. I said, not Dustin, he hates to write. We could barely get him to do his schoolwork, let alone for Dustin to journal.
Investigators begin to wonder if Tracey forced Dustin to write in the notebook in an attempt to set up her ex-husband.
She was going through another custody dispute with John Pittman, and John Pittman was the guy she hated most in the world. And there's no court in the world that's going to give custody to a guy that's accused of a murder for hire.
The notebook is kept secret from the public, the press, and all the potential suspects. Police believe that anyone who has knowledge of the journal could be complicit in the death of Dustin Wehde.
The investigators, they were waiting to see who was going to come forward and start talking about the notebook.
Meanwhile, Tracey and Michael's marriage, already on the rocks, is held together by the slender thread of the Dustin Wehde shooting.
It gave me a passion, it gave me something to focus on, and allowed me to make excuses for Tracey's behavior. I thought that there was going to be follow-up attacks because I still thought that Pittman or Lespiza or somebody's involved, so I'm hyper-vigilant. I was living in a war zone.
Tracey's obsession with John Pittman and the custody dispute continues. And Michael, well, he's about to get a real wake-up call.
I'd caught Tracey in another affair, late 2003, early 2004, and I took her back 3 times. And then in March, she tried to kill me.
He now realizes that Tracey was trying to drug him with sedatives in order to kill him.
You have to understand that I was under a systematic drugging campaign. Best I can estimate 2, maybe 3 weeks. I mean, I was in some sort of narcotic psychosis, and I went to sleep in the car, but I didn't that she'd started the engine and was trying to kill me with carbon monoxide.
I don't know a good way to describe their marriage or what went on in that house other than it's just strange.
One night, I was sort of semi-conscious. I mean, I was there. I can remember everything, but there was no resistance to anything. And she rolled me up in a sheet, big safety pins, pinned me, tied me up like a cocoon, sat on top of me and put a plastic bag over my head. So I had no oxygen for close to 10 minutes by my best estimates. I was just stuck, and I didn't think I had a choice. I didn't realize, because you put a frog in cold water and start boiling it, the frog will never try jumping out, it'll boil to death. That was me.
He saw these things, it was getting hotter and hotter, and he just acclimated and justified and explained. And then the next thing he knew, boom, there was an explosion.
What can happen sometimes is that a person who is inclined to give another a second, a third, a fourth, a fifth chance can end up enabling that person to be out there endangering people much longer than they should.
When Michael finally does go to the police, he can't persuade them his life is in danger.
I'm the guy, it's usually the guys that do the abuse.
Fearing for his life, Tracey's second husband finally jumps out of the boiling water. He changes the locks and files for divorce. Michael calls John Pittman, a fellow survivor of a Tracey Richter marriage.
And my first comment with him was, "Let me guess, you're afraid for your life." And he said, "Yes, very much so." And I said, "Well, that's probably a healthy thing to be."
With the second marriage over, Tracey tries to turn suspicion away from John Pittman and towards Michael.
Michael Roberts was never a suspect in Tracey's eyes, right up until the day they got divorced. Whoever she hated the most was responsible for the attack.
In the years following, the Dustin Wehde case goes cold. Mona Wehde attempts to bring a wrongful death lawsuit against Tracey, but she can't afford the legal fees.
We were getting nowhere. We felt nothing was happening, no questions were being answered, and that was our personal attempt to try to get questions answered.
Special Agent Trent Villida never believes Tracey's claim of self-defense. In 2010, 9 years after the fatal shooting of Dustin Wehde, he persuades the new county attorney, Ben Smith, to reopen the investigation.
There was just a lot of things that jumped out at me, even in the first hour that I really spent some time on it, that just did not add up. My first inclination was, what are you not telling me about this? Where's the dog in this thing? There has got to be, something that's just, impossible, an impossible obstacle or hurdle. So many questions that I'd go to sleep thinking about it. I'd wake up thinking about it.
They narrow down the list of potential conspirators. Police find no evidence that the dentist, Dr. Laspiza, is involved. The first husband, John Pittman, has an alibi. That leaves the second husband, Michael, and Trent's prime suspect, Tracey herself. With Ben on his side, Trent decides to take a chance. He engages Tracey in an email conversation.
Tracey was only going to communicate me if she thought I was on her side. I told her I was in charge of this multi-agency task force. We were going to discover the identity of the second attacker. Now, I didn't say I believe there was a second attacker, and I know in the back of her mind she knows there wasn't one. But as with any suspect who wants the police to believe them, I knew she would try to become cooperative.
As the emails go back and forth, Tracey starts to become more talkative, and she gets sloppy. Tracey brings up the notebook, the same notebook found in Dustin's car and kept a closely guarded secret by the police for 10 years. They know that anyone who mentions it may be complicit in Dustin's death.
She said, Michael Roberts had a premonition from God that Mona would find a notebook that would allow them to sue John Pittman.
Then, Tracey Richter makes a colossal slip-up.
I basically told her I was going to go talk to Michael Roberts and John Pittman and asked her if she would describe them for me. The most amazing thing happened. The one paragraph she used to describe John Pittman was basically paragraph 5 from Dustin's pink notebook, almost an exact quote. For me, that was a huge turning point. That was her saying, in her own words, what was in the notebook. I think that Tracey knew the longer she spoke with me, the worse it was starting to look for her. So I think she needed to end it somehow.
But Villada needs more. He needs proof that Tracey knew about the notebook at the time of Dustin's death. There's one witness that may be able to help, a close friend of Tracey's, Mary Higgins. If she knows about the notebook, she would have heard it directly from Tracey.
By all accounts, everything that I gathered from the report is that Mary was Tracey's closest friend. And it's not easy to get a best friend to tell on their friend knowing what the stakes are.
Trent had always told me that Mary Higgins, she knows something, and I had gotten to know her, met her a couple of times. I guarantee you, Trent, she knows nothing. And I go out there, she does not want to talk. She doesn't want to talk about it. She's past it. You'll never catch her. And then I said something, we think that we, found something that can link her to this. And she told me, you mean that stupid pink notebook? And I almost got sick when she said it. So Mary Higgins, huge. I mean, absolutely, tying her to that. Once we had Mary Higgins' testimony, that was the case.
Finally, 9.5 years after Dustin Wehde's death, Tracey Richter is charged with first-degree murder. At the trial, Mary testifies that Tracey told her about the notebook soon after the killing. The prosecution argues that Tracey convinced Dustin to write the diary and then shot him dead in an attempt to set up her ex-husband.
There's speculation that maybe she lured him up there, promising him sex for writing the notebook, or Dustin loved computers, so maybe she promised him a job with the company, or it could be as simple as she described John Pittman as a child molester, and Dustin would help out the family by keeping Bert away from Dr. Pittman.
People, say, oh, she was going to lose child support. She didn't care about child support. She cared about winning. She cared about beating Dr. Pittman. That's it. It's all it ever was.
On November 7th, 2011, the jury finds Tracey Richter guilty of first-degree murder. She is sentenced to life in prison. Tracey still maintains her innocence, as does her family.
They say that I just can't accept. And I said, I can accept it if it's true, but I know it's not true. And I'm going to fight, and I don't care. I'm never going to give up to prove that she's innocent.
Look at the lives that have been wrapped up around her and the people who've gotten close to her, what's happened to them. Between me and Michael and the dentist and all these people whose lives have almost gotten destroyed by her. Is that coincidence? I mean, you know, that's a heck of a coincidence.
She got first-degree murder, life in prison, without parole. It's true, it's real, it happened. That part is done, it's over with.
I hope Mona knows how deeply sorry I am. Not only did I bring her son into the orbit of a monster, I defended that monster and I insulted her son after he was dead. And for that, I'm very, very sorry.